Okay, I wanted to do a quick video on replacing the bearings in these motors. Sometimes you just get a really rough, not even really rough, but you just get a rough feel in the bearing, and sometimes it starts growling, and most of the time people just order a new motor and chuck this one, and I think that's a shame because there's quite a bit here still, and it's not that hard to change the bearings. So this motor had a saltwater immersion. And so what I'm doing is you can see the rust on any iron parts, some tarnish, and the bearings are obviously a little rough. One way to check the bearing to see which bearing's rough, what you can do is you take this. First, you have to take this. There's a washer and a little C-clip, and talk about that a little later. One way to find out which bearing's rough is you can just stick this outer housing in the bearing just a little bit, so you're not in through both of them, and then spin this. You probably won't see the difference on the video, but I can feel it in this hand. It's just a little growly and rough. And same thing with the back. I can stick this outer housing just slightly into the back bearing, spin it. That one actually feels really smooth. It's kind of surprising. So, but I'm going to replace both anyway. The things that you need are the replacement bearings, and they're pretty easy to buy. They're just forget exactly the specs. Actually, I should know that before I hit play, but I think it's 4 millimeters deep. You can check them here. 4 millimeters deep, 11 millimeters in diameter, so that fits in the hole, and 4 millimeter shaft. And I think they're specified 4, 11, 4. That's how you order them. And I got these from rcbearings.com, and they had 2 available. They were not very expensive at all. They had a metal shield, meaning they look like the originals. Let me just zoom in here. The metal shield like that. And I bought the ones with the plastic, little more waterproof shield there. And they have both these options, and I decided to go with the little bit more waterproof model. And I'll post a link with the video on where to buy these bearings. Here's the old one and the new one. So what you do, it's not that hard to do. Just take my, this is just like my 2.5 millimeter Allen set. You stick it in there, and I push it against the side. So I'm essentially pushing on this outer race of the bearing right here from the inside. Just hold it in my hands. I don't want anything too firm. And I just tap it. And I do a little bit on the other side. This one's kind of seized in there. And eventually it'll just pop right out. You can see it's already all the way, most of the way. And then for the other side, I like to use my 5.5 millimeter socket set. Socket wrench. It just fits in the hole pretty nicely. And you can just tap it with the hammer, and that one pops right out. And then just kind of clean out the bearing surface where it rides. And I sprayed this Q-tip with a little Tri-Flow. My bike kit, just to kind of oil the surfaces, so when I tap the bearing in, it's nice and slippery. And the trick to this is you want it nice and straight to start with, so you can see, kind of try to get it as square to there as you can. That one pushed in my hand almost all the way, which is good. You don't want to get it bound sideways in that surface. And then what I got here is an 8mm socket, long socket head. And it's basically the identical diameter to the outer surface of the bearing. Because I want to push down on that. If you push down on the inner part of the bearing, you can bend the bearing that race relative to the balls and tweak things, and that can ruin a bearing also. So this just pushes on the outside. You just give it a little bit of a tap. You can feel in here when it hits the bottom of that. It just stops real abruptly. So there's one. Try to get it started. Pushing on the outer edge. This one's pretty tight. There you can hear it. Hear when it hits the bottom. There it is. And I like to test them, just like I showed before. Just barely put this outer. It's really smooth. Now these rubber seal bearings or the plastic shield on them, what it said is it takes a little while for these to break in. They have a little more resistance than just the metal shield, but once they break in, they work good. And now that bearing feels really slick. There's like no growling, no bumping. It's like glass. And the magnets will pull it on there. Now, the tricky part with these that I found is comes with this. The motors themselves come with this little squiggly C-clip. And these are miserable little things. Just gotta figure out where these little guys. They're impossible, I've found, to take off and put on without destroying. So what I've done is I ordered a normal C-clip, and I've ordered two different sizes. I ordered the 4mm, designated for 4mm shafts, and then I ordered 3.2 E-clip 3.2, and it turns out these are identical. So I ordered these from A-Main Hobbies. It's a car part essentially, but they're 3.2 E-clip instead of, these are, I don't know what you call them, C-clips. It's called an E-clip 3.2, and they were the same size as this low C E-clip that designated as for a 4mm shaft. So it's got a 3.2mm opening, and that's so that it fits in the little groove that's in here. Now originally it had this little washer on first, and then you put the E-clip in the groove. And this is probably the trickiest part for me, is not losing these E-clips and getting it in the groove, because it's pretty tight. There's not a lot of slop. So I don't think I'll show you me struggling to put this E-clip on, but essentially that's what you do, and then you have a nice smooth motor.